A young clerk in Madras, India. No university degree. Or no mentor. No library worth mentioning. And he is writing down in the middle of the night mathematical formulas that the greatest professors in Cambridge cannot derive. He says a goddess showed them to him while he slept. And the formulas are correct, every single one. So I want to know what the hell is going on. Because either this man is receiving transmissions from some divine radio station, or something is happening inside his skull that we do not understand nearly as well as we pretend to. And both possibilities, frankly, are worth investigating. His name was Srinivasa Ramanujan, and the story of how he did mathematics is one of the strangest puzzles I have ever encountered, not because the math is strange, though it is, but because the method, the process by which the answers appeared, seems to violate everything we think we know about how thinking works. Let me give you the setup, because the facts alone are bizarre enough. Ramanujan was born in 1887 in southern India, into a Brahmin family. Very devout, very poor. As a teenager, he got hold of one single book of mathematics, a compendium by a fellow named George Shoebridge Carr, and that book was essentially a list. Thousands of results in mathematics stated one after another, with very little proof. Just the formulas. Most students would look at a book like that and think, well, this is useless without the reasoning. Ramanujan looked at it and something ignited. He began working through every result. Then beyond them, then into territory nobody had mapped. By his early 20s, he had filled notebooks with original mathematics. Thousands of formulas and identities, many of which professional mathematicians had never seen. He was working as a clerk at a shipping office, earning almost nothing, doing this work in his spare time by candlelight on a slate because paper was too expensive. He would write, erase, write again, and only commit the final results to his notebook. And he claimed openly and without embarrassment that many of these results came to him in dreams. Specifically, he said the Hindu goddess Namagiri, his family deity, would appear to him while he slept, and mathematical formulas would scroll before his eyes. He would wake up and write them down. He told colleagues that scrolls of the most complicated mathematics would unfold before him during sleep, so fast and so profuse that he could barely capture them all upon waking. So, a man with no formal training, no academic environment, receiving correct, profound, original mathematics in his sleep. From a goddess, that is the puzzle. And the obvious first reaction, the one most Western scientists had, was, that is superstition. That is a quaint cultural explanation for something that must have a rational cause. He is just very smart and does not realize how his own brain works. Fine, but hold on, let me push back on that easy dismissal, because it misses something crucial. Ramanujan was not making vague claims. He was not saying, I had a feeling about infinity. He was producing specific, precise formulas. Things like infinite series for pi that converge with extraordinary speed, partition identities that relate the ways you can break a number into sums, modular equations of a type nobody else was working on. When he finally sent some of these results to G.H. Hardy at Cambridge in 1913, Hardy stared at them for hours. Some he recognized, some he could prove with effort, and some Hardy said he could not prove at all, but they had to be true, because no one could have the imagination to invent them. Think about that. A professor at one of the greatest mathematics departments in the world, looking at formulas from an unknown clerk in India and saying, these must be true because they are too beautiful and too strange to be fabricated. Hardy rated mathematical ability on a scale up to 100. He gave himself a 25. He gave his collaborator Littlewood a 30. He gave the great David Hilbert an 80. He gave Ramanujan 100. And he had never seen anyone work the way Ramanujan worked. So what do we actually know about how these ideas arrived? Was it really the goddess? Was it just genius? Or is there a third option that nobody was looking for? Let me take you on a detour, because Ramanujan was not the only mathematician to report this kind of experience. Not by a long shot. Henri Poincaré, one of the greatest mathematicians of the late 19th century, told a famous story about his work on what are called Fuchsian functions. He had been wrestling with these things for weeks, sitting at his desk, drinking black coffee, trying one approach after another, night after night. Nothing worked. He was stuck in the worst possible way, the kind of stuck where you begin to doubt whether the problem even has a solution. So he gave up. He went on a geological field trip completely unrelated to mathematics just to get away from it. He was stepping onto a horse-drawn bus in a small town called Coutances. not thinking about mathematics at all. And the moment his foot hit the step, the solution appeared in his mind, complete, whole, as if someone had placed a finished painting on an easel in front of him. He did not even need to sit down and work it out. He said the certainty was immediate and total. He knew it was right, the way you know your own name. Jacques Hadamard, another brilliant French mathematician, studied this phenomenon seriously. He wrote an entire book about it, published in 1945, called The Psychology of Invention in the Mathematical Field. He collected stories from dozens of mathematicians and scientists, and he found the same pattern over and over again. A person works intensely on a problem, gets stuck, walks away, does something else entirely, and then suddenly, without warning, the answer arrives. In the shower, on a walk, in a dream, fully formed. Hadamard described the process in 4 stages. First, preparation. You immerse yourself in the problem. You try everything you can think of. You fail. Second, incubation. You stop trying. You go do something else. Third, illumination. The answer appears, seemingly from nowhere, often with total certainty attached to it. And fourth, verification. You sit down and check that the answer is actually correct. Usually it is. So Poincaré gets his answer stepping onto a bus. Hadamard gets his woken from a dream. Carl Friedrich Gauss reportedly said he got results as if by sudden inspiration, like a flash of lightning. This is not rare. This is common among people who do deep mathematical work. The question is, what is doing the work while they are not paying attention? And this is where it gets really interesting, because the easy explanation, the one most people default to, is that the subconscious mind is just running through combinations in the background, like a computer doing a brute force search. You fed it the problem, and while you are sleeping or riding a bus, it is trying every possible approach until one clicks. But that cannot be right. The number of possible combinations of mathematical ideas is, for any serious problem, essentially infinite. If the subconscious were just trying random combinations, it would never finish. It would be like a monkey typing Shakespeare. The math does not work out. You would die of old age long before your unconscious stumbled on the right answer by chance. Poincaré knew this. He said explicitly that what the unconscious does is not random. It has a filter. And that filter, he believed, is aesthetic. The unconscious mind is not trying every combination. It is trying combinations and discarding the ones that are ugly. Only the combinations that have a certain mathematical beauty, a certain harmony, get promoted to conscious awareness. The rest are thrown away before you ever become aware of them. Think about what that means. It means there is a part of your mind, a part you cannot observe or control, that knows what mathematical beauty looks like. It has taste, it has judgment, and it exercises that judgment on ideas you never consciously consider. You are aware only of the survivors, the ideas elegant enough to pass through the aesthetic gate. The failures, the combinations that felt wrong, those get discarded in the dark, and you never know they existed. It is like going to a restaurant where the chef has already tasted 100 dishes and only serves you the best one. You experience the meal as effortless. You do not see the 99 plates that went into the bin. So let me come back to Ramanujan, because he fits this pattern, but more intensely than anyone else in the historical record. And there is a crucial piece of the story that people who focus on the dreams tend to overlook. Ramanujan worked constantly, obsessively. His notebooks were not just lists of divine revelations. They were filled with pages and pages of numerical calculation. He would compute specific cases of a problem, dozens of them, hundreds of them, carried out to a length from which most mathematicians would have given up long ago. He got to know individual numbers intimately. One scholar said he treated each positive integer as a personal friend. When Hardy visited him in the hospital and mentioned arriving in a taxi numbered 1729, calling it a rather dull number, Ramanujan instantly replied that it was actually very interesting. It was the smallest number expressible as the sum of 2 cubes in 2 different ways. He did not get that from a dream. He got that from years of living inside numbers, playing with them, turning them over, noticing their properties the way a jeweler notices flaws in a diamond. His conscious, deliberate, painstaking work with specific calculations was the fuel. The goddess, if you want to use that language, was the engine that ran on that fuel while he slept. This is the part that changes the whole picture. The dreams were not coming from nowhere. They were coming from a mind so saturated with mathematical structure, so deeply steeped in pattern and relation. that the unconscious aesthetic filter Poincaré described was operating at a level of sophistication that borders on the incomprehensible. Ramanujan had loaded his mind with more raw mathematical data, more intimate knowledge of how numbers behave, than virtually anyone alive, and then his subconscious went to work on it, not randomly, with taste, with a sense of beauty that was, by all accounts, almost supernatural in its accuracy. The goddess Namagiri was the name he gave to the part of his own mind he could not see. And that is not a dismissal, that is not me saying, oh, it was just his subconscious, nothing special, because the subconscious processing that was happening inside Ramanujan's brain was something extraordinary, something we still cannot fully explain. The filter, the aesthetic sense, the ability to sift through an ocean of mathematical possibility and extract exactly the formulas that are true and beautiful and important. That is not ordinary cognition wearing a religious mask. That is a cognitive capacity that we do not have good models for. You see, here is what I think most people miss about intuition. They think intuition is the opposite of rigor. They think it means guessing, sloppy thinking, dressed up with confidence. But real intuition, the kind that produces correct results, is actually the product of a tremendous amount of prior work. It is the iceberg. You see the tip, the flash of insight, the formula appearing in a dream. But underneath is a vast mass of conscious effort, of failed attempts, of calculations carried to absurd lengths, of pattern recognition built up slowly over years. A piano player who has practiced a piece 10,000 times can eventually play it without thinking about which finger goes where. We do not call that mystical, we call that mastery. The conscious work has been internalized so deeply that it operates below the threshold of awareness. What Ramanujan did with mathematics is similar in kind but staggeringly different in degree. He internalized mathematical structure so thoroughly that his sleeping brain could synthesize new results the way a master musician improvises. And the religious framing? I think that matters too, though not in the way you might expect. Ramanujan did not just happen to be religious. His mathematics and his devotion were woven together. He said an equation has no meaning unless it expresses a thought of God. That was not a casual remark, that was his actual worldview. For him, doing mathematics was an act of worship. Finding a true formula was encountering the divine. I suspect this mattered practically, not just philosophically. Philosophically, when you believe that mathematical truth is sacred, you approach it differently. You approach it with a kind of attention and reverence that is very close to what a monk brings to meditation. Ramanujan's daily practice included chanting the 1,000 names of Vishnu. That kind of sustained, focused, repetitive mental discipline almost certainly shaped how his mind processed information during sleep. He was in a sense training his unconscious mind the way an athlete trains muscle. The religious practice was not separate from the mathematical discovery. It was part of the same cognitive system. So where does that leave us? I do not think Ramanujan received mathematics from a literal goddess. But I also do not think the explanation is as simple as he was really smart and his subconscious did some pattern matching. The truth is more interesting and more humbling than either of those stories. What Ramanujan demonstrates is that the human mind has capacities for pattern recognition and synthesis that go far beyond what we can consciously access or deliberately control. There are layers of processing happening inside you right now that you will never be aware of. And under the right conditions, with the right preparation, with the right kind of immersive, obsessive engagement with a domain, those hidden layers can produce results that look, from the outside, indistinguishable from magic. We do not understand how this works. Not really. We have words for it. Incubation, unconscious processing, aesthetic filtering. But those are descriptions, not explanations. They tell you what happens, not how. The mechanism by which a sleeping brain sifts through abstract mathematical structures and selects the ones that are both true and beautiful, that mechanism remains, as far as I am concerned, one of the deepest mysteries about the human mind. Ramanujan died in 1920 at the age of 32. He had returned to India from Cambridge, gravely ill. From his deathbed, he continued writing down mathematics from his dreams. One of his last letters to Hardy described mathematical objects he called Mach theta functions. It took mathematicians nearly a century to fully understand what he was describing. In the 1980s and beyond, his Mach theta functions turned out to connect to string theory, to the mathematics of black holes, to structures at the very edge of modern physics. He dreamed of objects whose significance would not be understood for decades after his death. So when someone asks me how Ramanujan got his answers, I say, the honest answer is that we do not completely know. We know that it was not supernatural. We know that it was not random. We know that it emerged from an extraordinary combination of obsessive preparation, an unusually powerful aesthetic sense, deep religious discipline, and cognitive machinery that we are only beginning to understand. We know that the mind can do far more than we give it credit for, and that the boundary between conscious reasoning and something deeper is blurrier than any of us are comfortable admitting. The next time you are stuck on a problem, any problem, try this. Work on it as hard as you can. Fill your mind with it. Learn every detail. And then put it down. Go for a walk. Go to sleep. Let the hidden parts of your brain do what Ramanujan's did, what Poincaré's did, what Gauss's did. You will not get results as spectacular as theirs. What nobody does. But you might find that the answer shows up when you are not looking, as if somebody whispered it to you. And if you want to call that somebody a goddess, well, I do not think Ramanujan would mind. Tell me, have you ever solved a problem in your sleep or had an idea appear from nowhere after you stopped trying? I would like to hear about it.